There is no championship action this weekend, but what we're going to do in this video is we're going to take a look at how the season has started for every club. We're going to go through the league table, we're going to go through FootMob's match ratings and how they've decided team of the week. We're going to look at who's taking up the top goal scorer ranking right now, who are the best team and best players in the league. We're going to take a look at that shortly in this video, but before we do that, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn on that notification bell and stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL Championship and League One content. This morning I dropped the League One preview for this weekend. Obviously a lot of international postponements going on, but there's still some games to look through, so if you're interested in that, go and check that out. But now let's get into looking into the Championship. So here we have it. This is the Championship, and this is where we are so far this season. Now, if we do just go and look at the top end of the league table, it is looking pretty rosy for some teams. Sunderland have started excellently. 100% record, just one conceded goal as well in that time. They've got 12 points from 12, 4 wins out of 4, 10 goals scored, 1 conceded. And I think even when going through the games and looking through the highlights and watching odd games here and there through Sky Sports and things like that, I think you can slowly see that Sunderland are building a really, really good team, and they've got a lot of potential in that squad, and they're only going to get better. Now, I do think that their youth and inexperience may be a hindrance to them further down the line, but right now it is showing that it is nothing like that at the moment, and they've done a really, really good job so far. Obviously, new manager coming in this summer. They've lost a big player in Jack Clark as well. He's gone to Ipswich Town, I believe, in what was a really, really good deal for them. It was some really good money, but it's one of those where they probably could have got a little bit more. And will it hinder their promotion? Maybe, maybe not. But I certainly think they're going to be in that promotion fight. You then look at West Brom, 4 wins, 1 draw. Their draw was against Leeds United. So that's a really, really good result for them. It's a really good set of results for West Brom as well. And I think I've spoke about it a few times throughout this video. I think Carlos Corberán is one of the best managers in the Championship. I think I'm not saying that West Brom don't have a good squad, but I certainly don't think they have the best squad in the division, and I think they're performing to a level which is really, really good. We then get on to Watford, who I believed that Tom Cleverley was going to be used as a scapegoat by the owners at Watford. I thought they put Cleverley in the position to take over when Watford was sort of in a bit of a sticky patch, and obviously giving him the job then full time. I think he's done excellently so far this season. Dropped only 3 points in this campaign. They're sitting on 9 from 12, 8 goals scored, 4 conceded. They know where the back of the net is. It's one of them for me where I really do think that Watford are going to build into this season, and I think they're going to do really, really well. Now, it's all about whether you can keep them going over the course of an entire campaign, and that's something which Tom Cleverley is going to have to learn on the job. Obviously, he's never been in charge for an entire season. It's his first senior management job, and it's going to be interesting to see how he does. You then got on to the next two, which is Leeds and Blackburn, both coming in with 8 points from 12. 2 wins, 2 draws each. Obviously, Blackburn Rovers started off the season really, really well with that 4-2 win over Derby County. Drew after that and drew the game just before the international break. But obviously 2 wins in there as well, which is really, really important. And I think Blackburn will be okay this season. I think they'll probably end up in the sort of mid-table area. I don't quite think they'll be up there pushing for playoffs come the end of the season. But I think John Eustace is a really, really good manager. I think he gets teams playing a certain way, and I do think it works for what he's trying to do. And obviously losing Sammy Szmodics is going to be a massive loss, but they've replaced him with Andy Weimann and players like that. And I think they've had a really good transfer window. And I do think that they're in a good position to move forward. I don't think, obviously when I made my predictions video, I had them down in the relegation zone, but they've reinvested really well. And the off-field troubles, which I sort of anticipated may hinder them in the transfer market, doesn't seem to have done that. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they progress. Leeds United obviously started their season with 2 back-to-back draws. They've won the last 2. 7 goals scored, 3 conceded. I think Leeds United are probably favourites for the title. Now, obviously, they've got to make up that 4-point gap on Sunderland. It will be interesting to see how that goes, obviously, and it's going to be really interesting to see where Leeds do end up come the end of the season, because they are a really good team, and they've got some really good players. And yes, I know they've lost a lot of quality during the summer, but they've still got arguably one of the better teams in the division. We'll then go on to the next two teams. It's Burnley and Middlesbrough, both sitting on 7 points. Now, Middlesbrough started off really well with that. I think it was a 1-0 win on the opening day. And then, obviously, they took that defeat to Derby County in the second game week. And it was one of them performances for Middlesbrough where they just didn't create anything clear-cut. Now, obviously, they've returned with a draw against Pompey and a win in their previous game, which is sort of heading back in the right direction. But you look at Burnley, their only loss this season has come to Sunderland. They drew their previous game with Blackburn Rovers 1-1. They've started really well. And the last two games just haven't quite been the same. Obviously, a lot of players have left over that period as well. It's going to be interesting to see how they sort of progress further down the line with Burnley, because obviously, with the quality they've lost and the players that have moved on as well, it's going to be really interesting to see how Scott Parker can keep it thriving at Burnley. Now, obviously, we then go on to all the teams with 6 points. There is 4 of them. There's Sheffield United, Oxford United, Derby County and Stoke City. Now, yeah, it's Stoke City, isn't it? So, Sheffield United, I think, come the end of the season, I think they'll be up there. 2 wins, 2 draws. I think they've done fairly okay. Obviously, still sort of bleeding some players in. You've obviously got the likes of Gustavo Hamer, who there was a lot of talk about. Ollie Arblaster, was a lot of talk about him potentially moving on as well. But I think come the end of the season, they'll certainly be in with a shout. Oxford United have started their return to the Championship really, really well with 2 wins and 2 losses. And they've been in every game. The loss against Coventry City, which they suffered, was a disappointing one for the Oxford fans, but it was still a fairly decent performance where they competed all the way through the game and they lost with that, I think it was a last-minute penalty, if I remember rightly. And obviously, they took that loss as well for their 3rd game of the season, but returning to winning ways at the weekend, which was massively important. Now, on to Derby County. Now, I've gone through my August review. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you go and do so. But winning 2, losing 2, 7 goals scored, 6 conceded, 6 points, obviously, with 2 losses and 2 wins over the course of that period. And I think if you look at the Blackburn loss, it was a really, really disappointing day because Derby County could have come away with something from that game. And the biggest issue that came from it with me was naivety and thinking that we could do the same things we did in League One in the Championship. And that sort of seems to have been resolved at this point. Heading into the Middlesbrough game, we played... I'm not going to say we played really well. We defended excellently. In possession, we was awful. And just couldn't really make anything happen. But we picked up the goal on the counter-attack, which was obviously super important. Then obviously you take that 2-1 loss to Watford, who are quite clearly a really good side, sitting on 9 points at the moment. They played really well. It was quite unlucky, really, with the second goal, but we've done what was necessary, and realistically, we could have won that game. If we played the same way we played versus Bristol City versus Watford, we'd have been laughing. And then obviously the Bristol City game where we tore Bristol City apart. 36% possession I think we had, if I remember rightly. I did review all the games from the weekend on the channel if you want to go and check that out. And it's one of those where if Derby County perform how they perform versus Bristol City every week, we've got no problems in this division. Now, obviously, on to Stoke. Started off with a win, went into the international break with a win, 2 losses in between. I think they probably would have anticipated a little bit more, but I'm sure they won't be complaining about 6 points from 12. Obviously, the big problem is they've only scored 3 goals. They've conceded 5. Hopefully, they can tighten up at the back and start picking up a few more goals. And I think with Stoke, they're one of those teams that are still trying to find their way back to where they once were. And it's going to be interesting to see when they do eventually do that, but they haven't yet been able to do so. So that will be interesting to see how that happens. And let's go on to the next group, who are all on 5 points. So we've got QPR, Norwich and Bristol City. Now, QPR have done really, really well since the incoming of Karamoko Dembele. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's probably in the top end of the assist charts, and I think he's only played a couple of games for them. And I think QPR under Marty Cifuentes will be well safe in this division. I think they'll do quite well. Obviously, picked up a win heading into the international break. It's 2 draws and a loss before that. Obviously, with a lot of these teams that we're getting to now, they lost on the opening day or they haven't been able to pick up a win yet. And it's all about getting that first win on the board. Now, QPR, Norwich and Bristol City have all done that. QPR just before the international break, Norwich the same. But then we look at Bristol City, and in all 3 of their games, they probably could have won. The 3 games, the draw, win and loss, they probably should have won all 3, in complete honesty. And the game against Derby County, as a Derby County fan that was sitting in the stands watching that game, I have no idea where the Bristol City was that played against Coventry, that picked up that win. I think it was versus Millwall, and drew with Hull at the start of the season. I just don't know where that Bristol City was. They didn't look anywhere near the same. They did have a lot of possession and they had a tough defensive unit to break down, but they were they're supposed to be a very good side in possession. They're supposed to have a lot of technical players, and Derby County gave them a lesson, really. Now, I think Bristol City will turn it around, and realistically, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL Championship and League One content heading your way across the course of this season. Let me know your thoughts on what we're discussing in this video down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next part of this video. 5 points from 4 isn't great. It puts you on, come the end of the season, it probably puts you on about 50 points. And I think they'll be well above that. I think they'll hit a run at some point, and that's what these teams need. It's what every team in this division needs. If you go on like a 5-6 game unbeaten run, you can take yourself from relegation threatened to potential playoff push. So we saw it ourselves with Derby County back in, I want to say 2020, just before COVID. We were poor up until Christmas. Then we just hit a run and went something like 12 games unbeaten between Christmas and March. Then we went into COVID, which sort of messed that entire thing up. But we ended up finishing like 8 points away from the playoffs. But that was after COVID, and we'd got to within like 4 or 5 points. So every team in this division just needs a run. But I think a lot of these teams, the likes of QPR, the likes of Norwich, the likes of Bristol City, will go on to do that. We then go on to the teams with 4 points. You're looking at Millwall, you're looking at Swansea, you're looking at Coventry. All 3 of them, 1 win, 1 draw, 2 losses. Now, Coventry and Swansea have gone in to the international break with a loss. They started the season with a loss. They've done the exact same thing: loss, win, draw, loss. And I'm hoping that Mark Robins can turn it around at Coventry, because I do like Coventry City. I think they've got a decent idea of what they want to do. They've been in a really good position over the last few years, and obviously you look at Swansea as well, and they've obviously been through a lot of change. I think they had Michael Duff in charge at one point, and they've obviously gone through the Russell Martin period. They've had Michael Duff, and now they're on to the next. And it's one of those for me where there's still a lot to do for Swansea to end up back where they once were, sort of in the Premier League and sort of at the top end of the Championship. And it'll be interesting to see how they sort of turn this season around, because they weren't great last year, and they haven't been great to start off, so it's going to be interesting to see how that moves. Now, Millwall, obviously, now, I had a lot of stick in the comments, I think, of my Championship review, where I said that Millwall were struggling to score goals. Now, I know they're one of the top goal scorers in the division, but I think they're sitting mid-table on conversion rate. I think it's like 12 or 13%, and you've got about 10 teams above them with better conversion rates that have obviously scored less goals, but they're taking more of less chances. And that's the important thing, is you need to be able to take your chances. Now, they're also conceding a ton of goals as well. They've conceded 7. And yes, there's teams above that have conceded similar numbers. And obviously, I think they conceded 4 to Bristol City, which was a game they scored 3 in. So really, they've scored 5 in 3. And it's one of those for me where I think Millwall will get better as the season goes on. I think they've made a couple of good additions on that deadline day. Coburn, who they've bought in, I think it's from Middlesbrough, I want to say. I think he's an excellent signing. I think he'll add something to their forward line. And I do think they'll move up the table as the season progresses. Now, let's get on to the 3-pointers. You've obviously got Pompey, Hull and Sheffield Wednesday, and also Preston. Now, Sheffield Wednesday started the season and a lot of people going, oh, they're going to be title challengers. They're going to be promotion contenders. And since then, they've lost every single game. And that 4-0 loss that they took to Sunderland was a devastating defeat after such a brilliant opening day. And they've just gone from bad to worse, in my opinion. I do think that they'll turn it around. I don't quite think they'll be relegation threatened come the end of the season. But I think when you look at the likes of Danny Roll, I think he's a good manager, and I think he got them playing some good stuff last year. It's now about turning that around and keeping it going, and I just don't quite think they've got going yet. And obviously, you'd have thought with a 4-0 win on the opening day, but they've not scored since then. So they've got some big problems down at Sheffield Wednesday. It's going to be interesting to see how they turn it around. I think Portsmouth have done really well. 3 draws, and I understand people are going to go, well, they've only got 3 points, but newly promoted, 3 draws. I think they've drew with Middlesbrough and Leeds, who in my opinion are going to be up there in the division this year. So I sort of give them the benefit of the doubt. I do think that these teams that haven't picked up a win, your likes of Pompey, your likes of Hull, your likes of Plymouth, Luton, Cardiff, all need to get off the board. Now, Pompey face West Brom next, which is another difficult game coming out of an international break. But it'll be interesting to see how John Mousinho sets up going into that game and what they do end up doing, because I do think they could put themselves in a really good position. Obviously, Hull City, coming off the back of I think they finished 8th under Liam Rosenior. They've lost a lot of talent during this transfer window, and I don't necessarily think they've replaced it. And I think that's a problem that they're going to have this season, and I think they could be in a little bit of trouble. Obviously, they've got a lot of good players, but have they got enough? And has what they've lost been too much? And that's something which we're going to see across the course of the next few weeks. Now, Preston, obviously they've picked up 3 points. It was Heckingbottom's first game in charge. They obviously lost heading into the international break, which isn't what they wanted, but I think it's really good the position they're in right now, because Heckingbottom gets 2 weeks with his squad, and they can obviously move forward with that. Now, I think Preston will be okay, but I think the big problem is they've gone through 3 managers within the course of 4 games, well, 5-6 games really, if you count the cup, and it's disappointing for them, but hopefully heading into this Middlesbrough game they'll spin it around. But we'll have to wait and see. Now, Plymouth are the only team on 2 points. They've picked up 2 draws and 2 losses. Only scored twice, conceded 7. And I don't know what Wayne Rooney's trying to do down there. I'm a bit unsure if the fans know what Wayne Rooney's trying to do down there. But I do think it'll be okay. I do think they'll end up probably getting relegated this season. I don't think it'll be for the want of trying. I think they're going to put themselves in a position that's going to be really difficult to get away from. Obviously, right now, if they win their next game, which is against Sunderland, so it's not going to be an easy task. But if they win their next game, they could go up as high as like 12th or something. So it's one of those for me where it's going to be difficult for them, but I do think they have the capabilities. Now, on the 1-pointers, you've got Luton and Cardiff, both only picking up a draw. I'm struggling with Luton Town because I don't know why they're not performing. I can let them off for Burnley on the opening day because Burnley were just so clinical. But I don't know what's happened since. Obviously, I think, did they get beat by QPR? Yeah, they got beat by QPR. They're heading in to play Millwall, who are coming off the back of a win. So it's going to be interesting to see what Luton do. And how long does Rob Edwards get before you start to ask questions? Because I think the squad at Luton is good enough to be top half Championship minimum. I think if you look at the likes of Colton Morris, Elijah Adebayo, they've got some really, really good players. I think it's Shandon Baptiste they've got in midfield. They've got some really, really good players. They've obviously spent something like 11 million on McGuinness at centre half. So it's going to be interesting to see how they sort of move on. Cardiff, pretty similar to Luton, I just don't know what to say. They've not been very good. they lost Ebo Adams in the summer to Derby County, and I think he scored the same amount of goals as they have this season, which is always quite interesting. Now, obviously, I forgot to mention when talking about Sheffield United, they did get 2 points deducted. So, although it's not showing on there that they had 2 points deducted, 2 wins, 6. Oh, no, they are. Yeah, it is. So, they should really be on 8 points. They should be up here with Blackburn and Leeds. But, sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier. I had forgot, if I'm honest. But Cardiff City, I just don't really know what to say. They've not quite hit the ground running like they expected to when keeping the manager. So it'll be interesting to see how long he gets before changes are made. Obviously, down in the comments, let me know, Cardiff fans, are you seeing improvements? Are you thinking you're going to get somewhere? Because obviously 1 goal in 4, 1 point in 4, conceding 10, it's not exactly good. I do think the draw came in the Derby game as well, which is obviously good for the fans, but not necessarily good for the team. Now, let's look at the top rated players, the top scorers, and the top assisters. So, Jack Clark, he'll stay there until it changes to a game, as many games basis. 8.29, but he's now moved on. Ollie Arblaster, 8.13. Really, really good player. He nearly joined Derby County. Well, Derby County were interested in him on a loan deal in January last year, and he didn't quite come through. We ended up getting Ebo Adams instead, which was a brilliant signing for Derby County. But Arblaster now performing really well for Sheffield United. And then you've got Karamoko Dembele. Always hurts seeing a player who could have come to Derby County performing well, because it just shows what could have been. Now, if we go to the top goal scorers, you've got 3 players on 4: Duncan Watmore, Josh Maja, and Mark Harris. I think Mark Harris has done excellently at the start of this season. Josh Maja picked up a hat-trick in one of the games. So, yes, he has scored 4 goals, but a bit of a caveat there. 3 of them were in 1 game. You then go to Duncan Watmore, who I think, in a Millwall team that has been able to score goals but not really find results, I think he's done really well. And then you look at the assisters, you've got Fellows on 3, you've got Mataka Guy on 3, and then you've got Karamoko Dembele on 2. And there's a couple of other players that are on 2 as well. I think Nathaniel Mendez-Lang's on 2. I think... shall we just click into it and see who's on? Let's go to the stats and let's see who's on 2, because I know there's a couple. If we go on to see all, so you've got Finn Azaz, you've got Milion Mahouf, you've got Max Bird, Patrick Roberts, Callum Britton, Mendez-Lang, Lucas Perez. Is there going to be more on the next page? Yes, there is. Elijah Mayenda and Mateo Joseph, all on 2 assists, and it's going to be interesting to see how this season plays out. Now, let's take a look through the teams of the week. Obviously, for the last weekend just gone, you've got Azaz, Mayenda and Manhouf as the front 3, Denor, Honeyman and Ozo in the midfield, Firpo, Clark, Cooper, Dykesteel and Gunn in between the sticks. If we go to round 3, you've got Kumas, Joseph, Saidi, Dembele, Arblaster, Roberts, Sirkin, Lindsay, Pollock, Bogle and Woodman. If you go to round 2, you've then got Wright, Sergeant, Mienda. He seems to be a common theme, does Mienda. Gustavo Hamer, not even going to butcher that name. KMB, Andrews, 09, Cabango, Sirkin and Josh Vickers. And then on opening day, you had a name which I'm not going to butcher again, Latte Laugh, Maja, Lang, Arblaster, Watmore, Perez, 09, O'Shea, Long and Patterson. Now, it's been a really interesting start to the Championship campaign. It's going to be interesting to see how it develops across the course of the season. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and I'll catch you in my next video. Be sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.